Hi, beautiful light worker. Thanks for watching Golden Otter Divinations, where the metaphysical meets the mainstream. I'm your host, Autumn Seibel, and today on episode 308, we have Doug Vermeeren here sharing his new film, How Thoughts Become Things, which anyone familiar with the movie The Secret won't want to miss, as you'll see some familiar faces like Bob Proctor, John DeMartini, Joe Vitale, Marie Diamond, John Assaraf, and Bob Doyle, along with some newcomers like Travis Fox, Karen Perkins, and Marina Bruni. And listen as they unfold the mysteries of how we create our reality with our thoughts. After listening, you can find more info by heading to the show notes, where you'll find our website and Instagram and anything we mentioned during the show. You can also access any new or full moon rituals we discussed and get more information on how you can join the Lunar Manifestations Co-Creation Tribe. Come visit us anytime at goldenotter.us. That's golden like the precious metal and otter like the precious animal. In the meantime, please be sure to click the like and subscribe button and comment down below so that you can let us know what you learned during this episode and what your thoughts were. All right, see you on the other side. Hi everyone, I'm Autumn and you're listening to Golden Otter Divinations. Thanks for joining us today as we explore where the metaphysical meets the mainstream. Join us each week as we share new, informative, and engaging interviews with medical experts, practicing mediums, intuitives, healers, and many more to help uplift, educate, and empower listeners like you to find physical and spiritual healing. So today I'm so excited because I have Douglas Vermeeren here to discuss his new film, How Thoughts Become Things, where he shares what he learned from his years researching the success strategies from business leaders and companies like Nike, Reebok, Fruit of the Loom, FedEx, American Airlines, UGG Boots, Uber, KFC, McDonald's, Disney, United Airlines, Microsoft, and others. You name it, he's interviewed them, and he's here to share their success secrets with us. So ABC Television and Fox Business refer to him as the modern day Napoleon Hill, who was the author of the original Think and Grow Rich book. He's also the producer and director of 3 out of the top 10 personal development movies ever made. And now his hit film, How Thoughts Become Things, is out for us to watch. So Douglas has authored 3 books, including in the Guerrilla Marketing series. He's regularly featured as an expert on Fox, CNN, ABC, NBC, CTV, and CBC, and many more. If you want to create more personal success or business success, then he's the one you need to become familiar with. His trainings are jam-packed with practical tools and strategies that will take you to the top faster than you ever thought possible. Currently, his program, Personal Power Mastery, is rated as number 3 in the world for the most powerful personal development seminars. But today, he's here to talk about his newest film, How Thoughts Become Things, who, if anybody is familiar with the original, mindset movie of the century, The Secret, a familiar cast including Bob Proctor, John DeMartini, Joe Vitale, Marie Diamond, John Assaraf, and Bob Doyle, along with some newcomers like Travis Fox, Karen Perkins, and Marina Bruni, unfold the mysteries of thought. So with a huge intro like that, and without further ado, I'm so excited to welcome you to the show, Doug. Welcome to Golden Otter Divinations.
Thanks for having me. And it's so funny. I got to stop doing stuff because that intro gets so long that eventually it's going to fill up somebody's show. I feel bad about that, but we're having fun, right? That's the key. We're having fun.
Yeah. I was at a thing once and Gary Vaynerchuk was up on the stage and somebody had read his bio and you watched it. He's like, I feel like my mom wrote that. Like, who wrote my bio? My mom is like, put every
Fair enough.
But it's good because it gives us like an idea of, why what you have to say is so valuable. So to raise our vibration, you and I were already kind of like laughing and joking before the show. We were playing Zoom tag on different calls, and so we got our vibration raised. But what I like to do as I start the show to really get in the flow is ask all of my guests if they've had any golden moments lately. So golden moment meaning a time you were just totally in the flow, maybe an interaction that was sent by spirit or otherwise otherworldly. Had any golden moments lately?
Wow. You know what? I think I have those all the time. And not just lately, but probably my favorite. And I kind of find, like, I like to ride motorbike too. That's one of my favorite things. So I kind of, as a sort of summer present to myself, I went and got a new bike lately. And so I find kind of when how does this sound? This sounds like probably the Eagles song, On a Lone Desert Highway, right? Here I am on a highway and I just feel so like connected to the universe, if you will, right? And in that moment, I had all kinds of neat things flood into my mind. So I'll be honest with you, I won't talk about it here, but I've got the next idea for my next movie. I've got some other things that I'm thinking about. And it was just a bit surreal because you know how things just kind of flood and flow into you sometimes. And you know it's not you, right? So yeah.
Absolutely. So I actually watched the movie How Thoughts Become Things like probably a month ago for the first time. And at first I was like, okay, yeah, this is, I mean, it's such a well-produced movie. It's got, you know, the big names and some new names. And I mean, anybody like in the metaphysical realm knows these characters, you know, Bob Proctor,
Sure.
you know, all the big names, Marie Diamond. And, but it was nice to see some new folks. And it's just such a well-produced movie. But sometimes like metaphysical movies and like new thought movies can almost like lull you into just like this, like, okay, cool. But then not necessarily take action on it. It's more like a passive passive receiving of information. So I sat with the movie for about a month, and then I just rewatched it 3 times back to back. And I was taking notes, getting ready for the interview to have some things to talk about. But I was like, you know what? The entire purpose of this movie is talking about how we connect our thoughts with a feeling and then we manifest. And so I decided to, right before this call, to do some manifesting. And I spent like 3 hours on Zillow just to get in like a really good vibe. It's like
Cool.
I don't do social media anymore. I like just look on Zillow for future homes that we're going to purchase. And I found this property in Sedona. It's like 75 acres. I showed my husband as soon as he got home. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, we have no plans to move to the desert. Well, we do, but like not immediate plans, but we know that it's coming and stuff. Anyways, if you guys are like in a space where you're like, I just need to be a passive recipient of some information that's going to shake my worldview and that you can sit with for a minute, definitely check out the movie and then let it sit with you and take action. That's my advice for the movie.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we tried to do, because I agree with you, so many of the films are just kind of like passive entertainment and people watch it and they're like, oh. But right now there's actually a workbook that you can get. It's free. The workbook is free. You just download it, but it allows you to guide yourself through the film. One of the things that I kind of found, like not only as I interviewed the 400 achievers, but as we prepared this film, is that really I don't want people to just think happy thoughts. That's not the goal of this mission, right? I want people to really start to manifest the realities that they want, but also to understand how they will arrive, not only from a metaphysical point of view, but even from a psychology point of view, and how really the science behind it works, because there is a lot of science that backs up now the power of our thought. So please use the workbook is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And you'll see that if you do the two in conjunction with each other, they really shouldn't stand apart. But if you do the two together, you'll see some really interesting things happen for you.
Definitely. I'm gonna have to go back and get the workbook. I didn't know there was one. I saw it on the
We've added all kinds of bonuses along the way. Some people don't see those, but the film is one aspect, and there's a lot of free bonuses there, and then there's obviously the ability to upgrade if you want to go more in depth. But the thing that I also like, even beyond the film, is we've included a series of interviews from many of those top speakers that go deeper into the content that, maybe some people are, how should we say, a little bit more mature maybe in this learning, that they're ready to go deeper. And so that's there. And then some of the other bonuses, actually, I've included some modules that go very, very deep into thought and also perception. We don't talk about that very often either, right?
That was a really cool part. I plan on talking about it later in the interview, where they actually talk about like the neuroscience behind our reality. So just because we believe something to be our reality doesn't actually mean that that's what it is. It's just our perception. And interestingly enough, there's this thing called the Yale Cope Project. Are you familiar at all with this? And so they're actually studying the way. So I'm a medium, I'm a practicing medium, and it's something I never shared for so long. I grew up in the medical model. My mom's an internist, and we always tried to find a way to like medicalize what was going on. And it was always this medical approach. Long story short, it's not until we got into metaphysics and it was like, we have to open and broaden our worldview, because my mom refused to let me be like a statistic basically and be medicalized. Point of the story is the Yale Cope Project is really looking into how our perception, like how our reality is shaped by our perception, and how we can all perceive different things, and that doesn't make one person crazy or delusional or anything. I'm going off into a tangent because I want to talk about the film. What made you make this film?
Wow, well, that's a great question. These films are always quite an endeavor, and every one of them is a different mission. I'll tell you, it's interesting. With this particular film, a lot of the elements that if you were to really do some serious research on this movie, you'd notice that I actually have been working on it since about 2010. So this is probably the longest movie that it's taken me to put together. And there's obviously a number of factors came into play, but one of the things that I guess the biggest factors, I wanted to get it right. I wanted to make sure that not only did I have the right cast involved, but we answered the right questions. And it wasn't just a matter of dealing with, how do we kind of see this? I didn't want it to be basic. I wanted people who had a grounding already, an experience already with this material to be able to go deeper. But I also needed to have it so people who hadn't yet experienced this could keep up with us, right? That they could kind of find out where we're going. And at the same time, I also wanted to make sure that I had enough science and backing behind things like how we're programmed, and really, you know, how to overcome fear and negative thinking, and to be able to really, how should we say, stabilize thought around what we do want to manifest. And then there's also the question of how do we overcome negative thinking. And the truth is, you know, when you see the film, you'll discover that negative thinking actually is not as detrimental as what most people generally are thinking. You don't have to be pristine, perfect, positive, you know, and all that kind of stuff. That there is actually a stronger way to do it, and it's okay to be human. Right? Because we all have off days, right? So it was just, it was wonderful to put it together, and, you know, I'm excited it's here now. But I don't know, I mean, to me, it's funny because people think you built a movie and then you can just kind of step away, but no, you can't. It's almost like you got one of your kids, right? So now they're born. What do you do with him now? Right? Now we've got to help him cope in the world. We've got to get him out there and help him build some friends. We've got to, right? Like, there's so many things that we now have to do with this movie to ensure that it gets into the hands of those that need the message. And the other thing was interesting. We think about how the universe really shapes things. We had no idea that COVID was coming. Yet this film, not only has it really enriched the lives of those that are struggling right now, but man, I've had some incredible letters from people. In fact, my favorite one so far is there was an 11-year-old boy that wrote to me, and he said, 11, I want to remind people, 11. And he wrote to me and he said, you know what? I mean, there's so many things that I'm afraid of right now. At school, I've been afraid of bullies. You know, I've been afraid of, you know, my marks at school. I've been afraid of what my future looks like because I'm not very good in school. And now this COVID thing, and I see all the adults in my life are also afraid. And he said that, you know, for me, this conversation, nobody's had a conversation with kids about what's going on with COVID. So here I am just observing those that I look at as my support mechanism, and they're terrified. What do I do? And he says, and then I watched the film and I began to understand more what fear is and how I can deal with it. And I feel much better. And that was one of the coolest letters that I think I've ever gotten. So yeah, it's neat, right?
Awesome.
It's pretty neat.
You know, I'm really glad that you actually mentioned kids. And so we live in rural Africa right now, and we kind of are in a bubble. We could, you know, our kids kind of know that COVID's going on, but it's like Voldemort. We never say it in the house, and they don't really know. And then they heard somebody say it. They're like, Mom, that person said COVID. I'm like, yeah, it's okay. It's not a dirty word. I mean, well, kind of is because it's a virus. But I was like, but we really minimize the impact of our kids to, like, they don't really know what's going on. But I used to teach high school social studies for over a decade, and I do curriculum development, or I did for a while. And I do think it's so important that students and children and young adults are introduced to this way of thinking early on. And before we started the interview, I actually was saying, gosh, has it really been 14 years since the movie The Secret came out? Because I remember reading the book in my childhood bedroom as a teenager, and then going off to college. And it was the same thing that you're talking about. It's like, well, when you see the adults in your life, or the figures around you, maybe don't have all the answers, you're like, well, I'm going to need some answers, because I'm getting ready to go out in the real world. Like, I'm excited for this adventure, but I'm going to need some tools in my tool belt. And The Secret, and like, oh gosh, what was some of the other movies that I watched early on that really had a big impact were What the Bleep Do We Know? And Chariots of the Gods. And this feels like a 2020 version of that that's been updated to talk about things like social media. There's you guys have a pretty good discussion in there about social media and the impact of like what we're consuming. I really love the part that you talk about with negative or toxic people. The current idea in like positive thought and metaphysics is like, cut it out, it's a virus, and just step away from it. But really, you say that high achievers and the folks that you've interviewed actually lean into that discomfort.
You can't run from problems. We have to expand who we are before we can expand what we have. And expanding who we are means that we embrace things that sometimes are not comfortable. And the one thing that I really love about that idea, and again, I encourage people to go see the film so you can understand more about toxic people. We talk about two kinds, you know, the complainer and the critic. The complainer we can't do anything about, but until we have clarity of who we are and what we want, we end up absorbing them. Right? So we've got to have clarity ourselves to build a boundary. But I like this idea of the critic and understanding that really they're someone who has good intentions. They're just not good communicators. They come with facts. They come with helpful suggestions. They come with lessons. And I think back to kind of when I was a teenager, I didn't like critics. You know, somebody said, don't hang out with those kids. I took it personally, right? Right. But I recognized that they were just trying to help me. And there's so many things in life that we limit ourselves because we aren't teachable, and we let our ego dictate that someone's toxic rather than they might have something that could help us. And it's so important that we recognize from a perspective of, that we all have, how should we say, things that we're trying to do, right? We all have missions that we're on. And sometimes those outside us, what do we say? If you're in the frame, you can't see the picture. That sometimes we ourselves, we're in a position where we can't really see what's going on around us. And it's those, like, as I studied 400 of the world's top achievers, it's those who are really, how should we say, curious. They're wanting to listen and understand and know. And their ego, they understand that you can be right or you can be rich. And I don't mean always in terms of money, but I mean with everything in your life. And the minute we choose to say, I'm right, I'm always right, is the minute that we cut off all kinds of other possibilities. It's funny, I was meeting the other day with a friend of mine. He's a 75-year-old man. He's worth about $800 million. We meet every week for lunch. And he said to me that when someone believes a lie or believes something, they're technically believing a lie. Because when you believe something is only one way, you've cut off all other possibilities. And if you use, again, this idea of money, like how many ways are there to make $1 million? Well, there's a bazillion ways to make $1 million. There's no right answer. And it's the same for you in your life. To get to a certain outcome, there's multiple ways that you could arrive. But the minute that you say there's only one, you're now believing a lie, and you're also disempowering yourself because you've cut off all the other possibilities. So I think we've got to be really open to sometimes receiving criticism and having, how should we say, a diminished ego enough to be taught, to be enlightened, right? Ego is one of the most damaging things that we can carry because it keeps us from receiving more, right? It's like with a cup. You heard the analogy of, here's my cup, and basically putting your hand over it saying, don't fill me up. Don't give me anything. My ego is good enough. I am good how I am. And that just destroys all possibility for growth and progress.
Very cool. So every time you say something, I'm like, that's also in the video. That's why it's such a great, this is such an encompassing movie. Definitely have to watch it. You talk about, the value of your tribe, and maybe value is not the right word, but it's like the people that we surround ourselves with and the way that they perceive the world impacts how we see the world. And
I actually love that you use the word value, and that is the right word. If you think about it, people, let me maybe deconstruct a phrase here that everybody leans on. They say our network equals our net worth, right? Well, let's take the word net worth. Net worth doesn't mean just money. It can mean, and most people think it does. But if we take net and worth, well, we've got that word worth. So what's that part of? Well, worthiness, values, the things that we find important, what's worthwhile, right? And your network actually does have a certain set of values. Those that you hang around with, those that you spend time with, they have a set of things that they deem worthy. And if we kind of hang out with a group that, well, let's put it this way, we hang around with a group that doesn't really have a high set of values, that they're willing to kind of do anything, their standards are very, very low and everything else. Well, you're not going to be happy in that group if your standards are high. You're going to always feel like you're hanging around with subpar type mentality. Now, again, I'm not saying we eliminate those people because they're not toxic. They just don't have a similar set of values to us. And so we really do need to add people to our life that do have similar values, because that's where we're going to find our feelings of validation, our feelings of belonging, our feelings of worthiness, our feelings of contribution, collaboration, all of these things, right? But I think for most people, they really don't know what they want. So therefore, they settle for whatever comes along. You got to be careful.
So interesting. I never really consider myself a high achiever because I feel like there's, like you said, we all come with a mission, and I feel like I know what my mission is, and I feel so far from even being close to completing it. I know I've achieved some of the things that I was meant to do in this physical lifetime, but I personally wouldn't consider myself a high achiever because I wouldn't say, well, this and this and this are my big achievements.
Let's pause for a minute, because I know something about you. You and I were talking before the show. You've been married 13 years. You've got kids. You've got a family that you love and that you value. What's interesting, in our last movie, the Treasure Map, we talked about abundance and wealth. And John DeMartini made a really cool comment. John's one of my best friends, so I always love hanging with him. And if you notice, he's in every one of my movies. It's funny. Yeah. But he said something. He said that everyone is wealthy. It just appears in the form that they value most. And that's really profound if you think about it, because a lot of us think that, we're looking for external validation. We're looking, like you said in the film, social media to tell us what to do. We often base our success on how many likes and subscribes and followers and all these things, like the attention that we get in these settings. But the truth of the matter is the things that really matter most to us are found differently. In fact, let me maybe express it also this way. You've heard the saying that says happiness is a choice, right?
Yeah.
Half true. Let me explain what I mean. So I do a lot of speaking around the world, and recently, before the virus, I was speaking at a maximum security prison in North Carolina. Now, as you can imagine, there's lots of people in there that made choices. And at the time, they thought they were making the right choice, right? Is happiness a choice? Well, partially true, because their choices did not lead to a place of freedom or happiness. In fact, many people are in pain because of their actions, right? Not just the victims, but even their own families, right? So what is happiness? Here's the definition. Happiness is a choice, but also being pleased with the consequences that arrive from those choices. And the consequences should always expand you and give you the ability to make future choices and also peace of conscience. And so when you have happiness or choice and consequence together that serve you together, you can then find happiness. And I think this is a thing that a lot of people struggle with, is because many of them base their choices day to day on immediate gratification. I'm going to go to the mall. I'm going to buy the new shoes or the t-shirt. I'm going to go see the movie. I'm going to go hang out with my friends. I'm going to party over the weekend. I'm going to do this. But they don't have a long-term vision. And success is always based on the consequences, not just the initial choice. So until we really understand that immediate gratification, the return on that is nothing. Like the return on that is always frivolous. You might get lucky from time to time, but the majority of the time, never really a great outcome. But if we understand with clarity what our purpose is, what do we say? That a goal that is specific and clear becomes attainable and near. And when we see with the long-term clarity of what we really want to achieve, then we can be happy. I love what Stephen Covey said. One of my favorite books of all time is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think it's just brilliant. And he says that some people climb the ladder of success only to find that they're leaning against the wrong wall. That's a tragedy, in my opinion. That we really need to understand that our success is a combination of two things. And when you talk about being a high achiever, I guarantee that you've thought about these. One of them is a clarity of purpose. So what am I doing? What would I like to do? What would I be pleased with as a result? But secondly is actually the feelings about it. You see, there's a lot of people that create things that the outcome is kind of cool and kind of neat, but they don't feel good about it, right? And although we talk about the 400 top achievers that I interviewed, the truth is I've interviewed close to 700 people, but only 400 of them did I find really understood that consequence is an important part, the legacy that they leave, the real big picture that they create, not just the quick money that they make or the quick gold medal that they win or whatever it is, the Academy Award, or, you fill in the blank. That's not really going to be fulfilling. But if those sort of highlights, if you will, along the way lead to the greater destiny, the greater outcome of who they are, that's when they're going to truly find happiness. And so I would say that you are a high achiever. And in fact, I would say, and it's interesting because, maybe I'm just pro women big time, but hey, if it wasn't for my mom, I wouldn't be here, right? And so I look at what are the greatest success stories that are out there. And I think, first of all, you have to say it's a mother who's able to raise children that are confident in themselves, that have, the ability to seek after the dreams, that they believe in themselves, that they know they can be something. If you've done just that one thing alone, you're among the highest success stories that are out there, in my opinion.
Oh, thank you.
Right?
Well, it's interesting that all of those things, yes, taken together. And I think the thing that I've never really focused on is that we are who we surround ourselves with. And sometimes we can get so determined in this pursuit of a goal. And I've never been great at marketing or networking or doing any of those things. I just sort of show up as my authentic self. And the people who are attracted to an authentic person tend to show up around me. And I'm very attracted to people who are really authentic. And you talk about this in the movie, how if somebody is saying something, or maybe one of the speakers, if somebody is saying something, but it's not in vibration with who they really truly are, you can feel that before
Yeah,
before you
that
even
congruency.
interpret what their words, yeah, you can feel the incongruency. And I've noticed that in my life that like while I may not consider myself a high achiever, I am surrounded by so many high achievers. And it's not even that they're high achievers in the sense that they are seeking to be the most well paid or climb the top of these ladders that they're at. It's that they're seeking to do the most good in the world. And like, we live in rural Africa, and literally everyone that I am in co-creation with on a daily basis, like their literal jobs in this world are to like make the world a better place by, making sure people have their basic needs met and their safety is met and their ability to vote in a democratic process is ensured and all these like things. And so I think that's a really important message that I need to take this medicine myself. It's like, stop and look at where I am in my own bubble and the impact that's being made. And it may not look like what we've been kind of conditioned or programmed by society for it to look like, but it is something really valuable. And that's
So you said something really cool there that maybe is worth highlighting. You used the word co-create. And I think, one big challenge that a lot of people have when it comes to creating success or even creating the outcomes that they want is they think that saying, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. And that's totally the biggest lie that we've ever been told. The truth is all major accomplishments, all great and grand things have always been done by a team. Neil Armstrong didn't get to the moon by himself. Sir Edmund Hillary didn't climb Mount Everest by himself. It was always a team. And it kind of reminds me of an experience that I had that was really kind of funny. You're going to laugh when you hear this. So when I was about 19, I wanted to do my first business, right? And so at the time I was meeting all these top achievers, multimillionaires and billionaires and so forth. So I'm looking for help, right? I'm going to see how I can build my big business. So there was this gentleman that I met with. He was worth about $300 million. And I sat with him for lunch and I said, I'm going to start a new business. So I said, what should I do about this? How should I get my marketing? How should I find customers? Where should I go to make this happen? What would I do to create this? And I'm asking all these questions. How should I and what should I and all these things? And he stops me and he goes, now get this, remember, I think I'm going to conquer the world, right? He says, I can tell you're going to be creating a very small company. And I said, what? That's like not the nicest thing I've ever heard. I go, what do you mean? I'm going to this is going to be a big deal. He goes, oh no, this is going to be a small company. And I thought, that is like the most offensive, crazy thing I've ever heard. So I got curious. I didn't let my ego get in the way. I said, what do you mean by that? Why am I going to be building a small company? He goes, well, I can tell you're going to be building a small company because you're asking selfish questions. I said, well, what is that? He goes, so far you've asked me, what do I need to do? How am I going to do this? How can I find this? How can I get the customers? How can I? He says, that's a small company. He says, if you want to build something big, shift your questions to ask stuff like this. Who will help me? Who knows the answers to this? Who can help me find my customers? Who can help me distribute? Who can help me market? Who can help? And he then pointed out that every great and grand thing is a matter of collaboration, that nothing big was ever built by an individual. Even when you see a guy like getting the Olympic gold medal, he's got coaches, nutritionists, trainers, all co-team people, like teammates and all this stuff. Somebody wins an Academy Award. He didn't film the movie by himself. There's a guy running the camera, another guy running the lights, another guy who wrote the story and doing the makeup and the costumes and blah, blah, blah. So we've got to really understand that our society has kind of fooled us into thinking that it's up to us. Again, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. And that's totally a big, big lie. It's totally not true. You need to understand, where can I get help? And this idea of your network, take that word net and just remember that it really is not really about the money. It's about a safety net. That's what it is. It's a safety net. And the better the relationships that you learn how to build, the more connections that you have at higher levels, the stronger the problems are that you can solve. You can solve bigger problems and in better ways. And so I like right now, there's a lot of gurus online that are saying, I can teach you the highest value skill. And then they talk to you about sales. That's kind of the secondary skills. It's not the highest value skill. The highest value skill is to build and maintain effective relationships. That's the number one skill. If you can learn how to do that effectively, there's nothing you can't do, because it's not, how do they say, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And, you know, I've seen so many of my own students that I teach that as soon as they figure out that it's all about relationships and connections, that, you know, you don't have to have all the answers. In fact, you don't step out of your comfort zone. Don't step out of your comfort zone. Step into your brilliant zone. What are you really good at? What are you really passionate about? What are the gifts that you have and the talents that you have? And then find people to go outside of the comfort zone, right? Like I don't build my own websites. Even this movie, I'm glad you brought it up that you love the movie, but I didn't do a lot of the work behind it, right? I didn't do the editing. I've got a really great editor. Of course, I share my opinion, but that's his skill set. And I let him do what he does and I get out of his way. There's things I'm good at. There's things you're good at. That's where we need to put our focus, right? Mastery equals monopoly. Mastery equals monopoly.
This is all good advice. I'm sitting here listening because we are actually, so I've never really shared that my company is a social purpose business. 10% of all of our proceeds have always gone towards supporting community building efforts. Here in Malawi, I fund women entrepreneurs like through micro grants. I used to call them micro loans when somebody goes, well, what's your interest rate and how long do they have to pay it back? I go, oh no, I just give it to them in small amounts over a certain amount of time. And then, no, that's a grant, not a loan. I was like, okay, so clearly
that's cool. That's
like,
cool.
Man,
that's really cool.
That's not my thing. Yeah, but so now we are getting ready to build a preschool in a local village, and the community, and the community has raised $9,000 and they're looking for a $7,000 match. And this is the first time that I've actually needed a little bit of buy-in from my own community, my own listeners. And at the end, I'll mention our Be the Change pledge for anybody who's interested. But like, this is something that I'm now entering into this energy of. Like, I used to be like, I'll just do it by myself. I know how to get this done, and I'll just make it happen. And now once we start to like accept that our thoughts become things and we can create whatever we'd like, there is a certain ego that you have to set aside and say like, I do need help. And I'm open to that help and that assistance and that teamwork and those connections coming to me rather than me having to like, work hard. And I know it's going to come together. I know it's going to be perfect. And I'm so excited for this school. I'm more excited just for the community to have this school for the children. But I think you're so right. It's about like, shutting down the ego.
Let's chat offline about how we can help you. Let's chat offline.
Yeah, I would love
how we
to.
can help you on this.
Absolutely. Very cool. Yeah. Okay, so back to the movie. See, it's like, I don't even share that stuff. I'm like very private about those things. And then people are like, Autumn, you're doing good in the world. I'm like, yeah, but that's not the point. Or is it? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think it's important to share because not only like, as long as you're not doing it for, hey, look at me, look at all the great stuff that I'm doing, right? That's the wrong approach. But if you're doing it in the sense that you're doing good, I think you should share it because there's people that are going to resonate with that and then they'll join you on that mission. They'll join you, right? And they'll say that that's a really cool thing. And I think it is cool what you're doing. So like I said, chat with me after. I got some ideas for you.
I will. Okay, nice. Cool. Okay, so back to the movie. So let's talk a little bit about how it differs from The Secret. And then how does we've talked a little bit about this, but how does the law of attraction work in regards to thought? Can you tackle those two?
Well, yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that it's different than The Secret and the other movies that have come out. Like, I think the one thing about, The Secret and I think the other movies, and even this movie, is they're really intended to be the beginning of a conversation, right? Mm-hmm. We can't really share everything that we'd like to share in, one film because it's just the concept and also the individual application is just too large for that. So I think that that's one of the biggest differences. And one of the things that I do love about The Secret, here's a funny story just to kind of tell you too. When I first started interviewing the top achievers, like my background is in film and TV. Okay. So funny enough, I used to do stunt work in TV. I also, as a kid, was involved in extras and, and I've written scripts and all that. So I've always loved movies. So when I was interviewing the 400 of the world's top achievers, I actually approached a distributor and I said, I've got an idea for a movie. I'd like to show you behind the scenes of how some of these amazing people, work, right? Like the success of it. And they said, well, you know what, if we took it to somebody like Blockbuster, we wouldn't know where to put it. Would you put it in the how-to videos or is it a documentary? Or they didn't know where it fit. So they said, run along. So I was like, because this would be such a good idea. Well, all of a sudden then, first of all, What the Bleep Do We Know came out. And then The Secret right behind it. And all of a sudden, everyone was interested in this kind of stuff. That's when my phone went off the hook. Right? All of a sudden people were like, would you still like to do your movie? And I was like, oh my gosh, of course I would. So we did my first movie in 2008. I think some of the big changes since The Secret came out in 2006, we came out in 2008. There's been a couple of our other movies. I think we did one in 2013, one in 2015. And there's been other movies too that have come out. But I think some of the biggest changes, obviously I could talk to the technical part of things. I think our movies are much prettier to look at now. And the way that we can do things, it's just more slick, right? More cool. We can teach in better ways. But I also think that people are, how should we say, more awakened to the conversation. They're ready to kind of see that they have more control over their destiny and who they want to be. I think that it's been something where in the past people have looked at it with a very narrow new age kind of point of view, thinking that this is really weird, woo-hoo stuff that nobody knows. It's interesting, and I don't mean any disrespect to some of the people that sent me emails, but when we did our first movie, it was still the world was very woo-woo. And I had some nasty emails from people that I thought cared about me, people from different church groups and stuff that told me I was going to hell and all this kind of, it was interesting. Yeah. I'm sure you've seen that, but the strange, well, why not, right? Hell's going to be an interesting place, right? But
I'm like, come swim with me in the woo waters, you guys. The water is fine. And I'm not drowning.
And the thing that I get it. And you know what? I didn't come from the woo-woo background. I came from interviewing top business leaders and top celebrities and top athletes. Some of them had some of that, but it wasn't as common as it is now. And the thing that I found very interesting, because I came from one foot in that world, and now I kind of see, the metaphysical world as well. But there's a lot more truth that overlaps than most people will recognize and realize. And I think when people have an open mind to see things how they really are, they'd be surprised what they actually already believe. They just give it a different label, right? Like they've given it different words for something that they totally agree with. And there's much more in common and so forth. So I don't know. I mean, I think what we've tried to do is, with this movie, is we've tried to present it in a way that is accessible for everybody. We're presenting things that we believe to be the reality, and we've got a lot of science to back it up. And at the same token, I think that there's certain things that science can't measure, right? So we've also got to understand that there's principles that we don't understand. Like, and I don't know, I think science is sometimes, I'm not meaning to like start a big can of worms here, but I think we've got to be careful how much credence we also give to science. Because at one time we thought the earth was flat. At one time we thought, just fill in the blank. There's a million and one things that we never got right. But as we, we evolve and become more enlightened, there's some very startling things. And I think that sometimes there's laws in operation that we just have not had enough exposure to understand at this point. And so rather than discount it and throw it away and say it can't be true, it's all a bunch of whatever, I think back to this idea of our ego holding us back, we need to understand and be teachable so that when these things appear, we don't dismiss them immediately. And I'm not saying that we accept everything at face value. What I am saying is that we be much more cautious to be curious before we condemn. That's what I'm saying.
You're my second guest who's discussed this idea of like, science is great, but we can't trust everything in science because it's imperfect, just like anything. But I had a guest on in season 1, Dean Radin. He's a noetic scientist, and he talks about our fundamental understanding of of science is flawed because consciousness is at the very top. And if we inverted that and had consciousness at the bottom of our understanding of how the world works and how we approach things, we would be a lot more mindful. And things like How Thoughts Become Things, the movie, it wouldn't be approached with any kind of skepticism, because this underlying idea that our thought leads to our concrete reality because there's a unified field. And I don't know, I just think 100 years from now, people will watch your movie and be like, duh, but then they'll watch the things.
That'll be interesting.
Duh. But then they'll
just like Copernicus, he discovered something here, right? You never know, right? I don't know.
What will be even crazier
I'm not
is
that
when
smart.
No, you are. When we're watching, 100 years from now, if we're watching things like Thoughts Become Things, and then maybe whatever is currently on our Netflix queue, we'll be horrified. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we were taking in that stuff. I mean, even if you look at stuff from 20 years ago, the language that they use, the the machismo, just the stuff that you see, and you're just
well, even if we look at what's going on in the world today, even the racism that was considered acceptable, right?
Exactly.
So here's the deal. And by the way, when I say I don't consider myself smart, what I do consider myself is a messenger, because I'm not inventing anything. I didn't come up with any of these ideas. I've observed them, I've recorded them, I've asked the questions to draw them out, we package them in a way that we want to share them with the world. But, this isn't my creation, right? I don't own this. And, it's kind of funny because I've also gotten a lot of mail lately from two specific people I'm thinking of anyways, who basically said, this idea of how thoughts become things, how come you don't have so-and-so in your film? And, did you take this idea from, and they specifically mentioned Jerry and Esther Hicks and all this stuff. And I'm like, I honor what those guys have done. I think I've got nothing but respect for the work that they're trying to do. But the truth is they didn't invent this either. And to tell either me or them or someone else that they own these ideas, it's like saying the law of gravity. Why are you talking about that? Don't you know that was invented by someone else? Well, the truth is no, it wasn't invented by anyone. It has always existed, and it always will exist. It's just that certain people have had those conversations. And I honor the people having those conversations, right? They have no ownership of those laws or principles, and neither do I, right? We're all stewards of our own life and how we apply them to the principles, right? And if I choose to jump off a building, well, it just demonstrates that I use gravity in a way different than people who are choosing to be more safe, right? And so I'm not going to recommend that, by the way. Don't go try that today to prove a point. But the truth is laws aren't owned by anyone. And even anyone, even your listeners here, the point that I'm trying to make is everything that you want to apply, everything that you want to learn about these laws is available to you. There's no limit or no boundaries towards what you're able to understand or grow into. So be confident of yourself enough to pursue that.
You said two really interesting things, conversation and messenger. And I couldn't agree more that anybody who's in New Thought or in this realm who tries to keep a hold on their thing and they're like, this is mine and it's proprietary and hold. It never takes root. And it's like, it just kind of shrivels up because it lacks the
Here's something else too that's really funny. Did you know that abundance cannot exist in the same place where you've got 1 foot in scarcity and 1 foot in abundance? You have to be all in. If you want to have full abundance, you can't have 1 foot and say, oh, this is mine and I'm scarce. And then, the competition, the jealousy, the comparison, the criticism, any of these things. Because here's the thing that's interesting is ever since the Big Bang, the universe has been expanding, right? And if you want to expand what you have, you must expand who you are. And if you decide that you will contract and fight against the universe, you're operating against the whole system, right? So let's look at it this way. The universe is an echo chamber. If you show up with scarcity, jealousy, hate, comparison or criticism or racism or any of these isms, even homophobia and all these things, if you show up with any of that, you're actually in a state of contraction. You're thinking in a diminished way. But if we show up with confidence, with boldness, with excitement, with enthusiasm, with power, with brilliance, with boldness, with belief in ourselves, we're in a state of expansion. And the universe will also lead us in that direction. It will open the doors in that direction. And so I think it's really important that if you are considering yourself a thought leader, that's why if you look at the book, The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles, he said, whatever may be said in praise of poverty, the fact remains a person is not truly successful until they are rich. Now, he is speaking primarily about money, but that richness is actually everything. So if you're also a thought leader or a teacher and you're saying, well, I don't really care about money, then you're a liar. Right? If you say, I don't care about, having the wealth and riches of the world, then you're also a liar. Because the truth is you need to always be looking in a form of expansion. Socrates said it this way. Socrates said, we are teleological beings. And that means that we are happiest when we're making progress. Not when we've arrived, and even not when we've received a certain amount of money, but when we're in a form of expansion. And expansion in all things, whether it's relationships, abundance, health, connection to spirituality, connection to ourself, to you fill in the blank. All of those things must be an expansion for you to be truly fulfilled. And I think most people, they have a narrow view of that, and they think that humble and poverty represent spirituality, but it's the opposite, right? Yeah. They hold themselves back.
I used to kind of hide that I was, I started my own company for financial abundance, but I mean, mainly just to kind of come out of the spiritual closet and start normalizing conversations about metaphysics and mediumship and the woo, and just to normalize it and to help destigmatize mental health labeling that can happen with that. And then along the way, my mission has become bigger, and becoming financially abundant has become such a big part of my company, because the more I have, the more I can give, the more I can do, the more I can build, the more I can share. And anyways, I just think that there is definitely something to that. And this vow of poverty, I revoke any vow of poverty that I have ever taken in a past life or in this life or any life, because I've got a road ahead that is
well, a vow of poverty is simply saying I'm okay thinking small. I'm okay being small.
Mhm.
I'm okay being little.
Yeah.
And that's not right.
No. So speaking of how folks can change their thoughts, where can we go to see this movie? I have howthoughtsbecomethings.com in my show
That's
notes. Is there
perfect.
anywhere else we should send
Yeah,
it? That's
we've
where.
tried to make it easy. So there you have the name, How Thoughts Become Things. Just add .com and you'll be there. And one of the biggest things that I think is interesting, which we didn't get into, and I know we're almost out of time, but you notice how thoughts and things are all written at the same. There's a hidden key on here, and that's that word become. And most people don't really think about it. That's why we put it smaller so that it stands out. It's the overlooked thing. And this whole idea of thoughts becoming things is really about the change. What are you going to become? That's the big question. What are you going to become? Because if we'd like to get on the vibrational frequency of something new, we must become something new. If we want to accept something new into our life, if we always do what we've always done, we always get what we've always got. We've heard that. So what will you become? And I think that's the big challenge that I'd like to leave with your listeners is become something different, bigger, better, expanded. Trust your inner brilliance, trust who you are, and become it. Seek it, and it will happen for you.
Oh my gosh, I just felt that in my like solar plexus, my sacral chakra. So I hope you guys are feeling it too. As you're saying like what we become, I'm like, oh my gosh, so much. Oh, that's big. Like, whoa.
Yeah. And don't fight it. Don't fight whatever it is you're destined to become. And because sometimes we look at this big thing and we say, there's no way I can do that. Just remember what I said. You don't have to do it alone. It's not up to you by yourself. Right? Not up to you by yourself. Level up. Get a good group around you. A team supreme, the dream team, right? Yeah.
Perfect. All right, so we'll end this with a quote that's at the very end of your movie. It says, your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. And I definitely think you guys should all check out the movie because it's just really great. And it's gonna call, you're gonna be up leveled. Like it's a call there is a call to action to up level. So after you've watched it, you can't just go back to your usual Netflix binge. You'll be called to spend 3 hours on Zillow looking for $5 million properties in Sedona. Or other things, or building preschools in rural Africa. Whatever your thing is, you'll be called to it. So thank you guys so much for listening. Be sure to follow Golden Otter Divinations on Instagram, where you can check in with me and let me know about your golden moments so Spirit and I can cheer you on. And if you'd like to contact me or join my monthly manifesting membership, Lunar Manifestations, you can visit us at the Join Now page at goldenotter.us. That's golden like the precious metal and otter like the precious animal. Please take a minute to sign up for some inbox gold to stay up to date on all things Golden Otter. Also, we're excited, like I mentioned earlier, to share our Be the Change financial pledge with 10 to 50% of the proceeds from all members' plans sold going directly to supporting community building efforts in rural Africa aimed at addressing global inequalities so that you can be the change that you wish to see in the world through your purchasing power. To learn more, click the Be the Change link in our show notes. All right, I want to thank my guest today, Doug Vermeeren, for sharing how thoughts become things and how we can connect our emotions to thought to magnetize the lives we want. And I want to thank you all for tuning into Golden Otter Divinations. I had an amazing time sharing this sacred co-creation space with you. Have a great week, and I'll see you positive vibes back here next time. Bye. Thank you, Doug. All right, Lightworker, thank you so much for watching Golden Otter Divinations. For more tools to uplevel your metaphysical game, get your questions answered, and connect with me live at the next new or full moon, please consider joining my Lunar Manifestations Co-Creation Tribe now by heading to the link in the show notes. We're excited to announce our Be the Change pledge with 10 to 50% of all proceeds from members' plans going directly to community building efforts in rural Africa so that you can be the change you wish to see in the world through your purchasing power. For more info, check the link. And lastly, if this moon thing is not for you and you want to connect with me in real time, you can schedule a private one-to-one validation session by heading to the Book Now link in the show notes. It's always my honor connecting with you in this sacred co-creation space. In gratitude, Autumn.